Hello, everyone. Fear, panic, paranoia, anxieties of any kind. These are all things that can point us in a certain direction, drive us down a certain path, and bring us to a certain destination. And a lot of times, we might not like where we end up once we reach this destination. We might not like the place that we find ourselves in. We might think we're going to the golden halls of wherever, heaven, nirvana, some paradise, out of this fear that, tells us to not be in a world that is scary to us, when really that paradise that we hope to find is just like a broken down shack with a collapsed ceiling, wet, flooded floors, and creaky floorboards that we can't walk on without making some sort of annoying noise, and we realize this place is not habitable. This place can't be lived in. We can't stay here. I don't want to stay here because this place kind of sucks. In fact, it sucks worse than the place I was just in. I'm going to head back. Fear can be a thing that makes us think that we're on the right path. Fear can be that driving catalyst, that driving force that makes us say we're doing the right thing, because if we're avoiding fear, there's a good chance we are avoiding something that's harmful. Something that's scary must be harmful. And while I think it's pretty clear that this isn't always the case, a lot of times we feel that way because the fear is a warning. It's a warning to us that we might get hurt. Even if there's no evidence to tell us that necessarily, or even if there is, we'll work off the fear because the fear serves us in some way. The fear is like that thing that nudges us forward. Instead of having this sort of pressure to move forward on our own, from our own merit, in this very uncontrolled, unpredictable way, we'll have fear, our best buddy, fear, push us off the cliff so that we fall and we go into the water and drown. But hey, at least we didn't have to make the decision ourselves. At least we didn't have to do the scary thing. Now, this is a very understandable feeling because we've all been through it. I've been through it. I've been through it. Many times. I lived my life through this shit. I lived my life that way, that I always had fear pushing me off that cliff and going into deeper and deeper waters until I eventually drowned in it, and I had to find some way to not die, so I swam out. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. I do know how I did it. I'll talk about that. But the point is, fear is something that seems comforting sometimes, even though it makes us feel bad, even though it makes us kind of, freak out. It can make us feel good in a way because it tells us we don't have to go and do that scary thing. If the fear is strong enough and the potential consequences in our mind are strong enough, that fear can be the blockade that shields us from the consequences. We don't got to go and do that thing because fear, honestly, should be listened to a lot of times. If we go out and see a bear in the woods, typically the fear would tell us to not go near that bear and try to rough and tussle it. We would probably need to get away from it somehow or do whatever survivalist technique that people tell you to do. Get big or whatever, get big. We might have to do that, but the fear will tell us to not engage. And that's probably a smart move. Now, we all know about fight or flight. We've heard that many times from different people. And there is, of course, something to look at there. When we see something that causes anxiety or fear or paranoia or panic, that amygdala response flares up and we have a choice to make, whether we want to go towards that threat or run away from it. Now, running away from it is probably the best way to ensure some sort of distance between you and the consequences. Even if the distance between the threat and you is still just as close as it was before, if you can maintain a distance from that thing by running away from it, or running towards something that's a little bit more, secure for you, then you can at least maintain some distance from the potential threat that comes with that scary thing. It's hard. It's hard to not convince yourself to run towards whatever direction, would tell you that you're going to be okay, or that you can fight this fear and punch it in the face and say, fuck you, I did it, because I ended up doing this other thing in avoidance to you. It's very attractive to try to run away from fear in the name of doing something, fearless is kind of the point I'm trying to get at. For example, I'm still doing this weight loss that I've been doing. I'm down 105 pounds now, about, I think, give or take. And for this entire journey that I'm going to talk about extensively once it's done, but for this entire journey, I have been both running towards a great goal that is fueled by gratification and fueled by motivation that tells me I'm good for doing this, but I've also been running towards, or rather away, from the fear of failing, the fear of going back to where I was, regressing, that overeating, that food addiction, that pain. I've been running away from it. And those parts, the parts of me that feel that way, as if I have to run away from the fear of failing and succumbing to the pressures of everything in my life by eating excessively, those parts of me make my whole weight loss journey start to crumble because I get hard on myself, I get down on myself, and I start to beat myself to a pulp and tell myself I got to do this thing right or else that big monster in the distance is going to get closer. And that's terrifying. I never want to feel that way again. I don't want to feel like I'm going to have to be some sort of fucking gross mess in my mind, to be honest. The way that I viewed myself, the way that I felt about myself in my life when I was 350 pounds, I don't want to feel like that gross fucking monster who just overate all the time. Now, I know that's not who that is. I know that rationally. I have compassion and empathy for that kid. I know what he was going through, and I know that he was trying. Even though he wasn't succeeding, he was trying. But I know how much fear I have towards him and how much fear he had towards himself and what that created. It created a mindset of someone who hated who they were because they didn't know what was going to come from it. They didn't know if they were going to be around in 5 years. They didn't know. The way they were eating, the way they were doing everything in their life, running away from fear, not towards something, but just in general, running in this directionless way to try to get away from something painful, I didn't know what was going to happen. And so the parts of me that kind of remember that, the unconscious and conscious brain there, looks to that person and says, fuck it. I don't want to be anywhere near that. I'm running somewhere else and I'm going somewhere. I'm going towards the pound a day lost cycle that I've been in. I'm going towards this excessive exercise pattern that I've been in. This under-eating pattern that I've been in at times. I'm going towards it. And that's fear-based. And it hurts. It's been a detriment. Now there have been plenty of positives here. Plenty. A ton of positives from my ability to push through and persevere, even when it feels rough and it hurts. I've been able to do that. But it's not like I did it through some fucking means of me hating myself and saying, you're a fucking bitch, dude, get up. No, the things that made me persevere were the times where I was like, dude, you're hurting right now. Take your time, and tomorrow we're going to get at it, and I'm going to help you through it. It's just that simple. Fear is not my buddy here. Fear is my antagonist, my enemy. I'm my own buddy. I'm my own best pal, my bubble buddy, you might want to call it. That's me. And even though it's imaginary, even though it's just in my head, I'm the one who motivates myself through a reward system, through a gratification system. And that's what makes me succeed. And it's so important that I do that. When fear is my driving force, when fear is the thing that makes me feel alive, like I have to go and do something and makes me feel quote unquote motivated, I'll put a standard on myself that's unachievable. I'll put this pressure on myself that I can't alleviate. And I'll set a goal that's unobtainable. Because that fear, I talked about it in my last little real talk, that fear makes us act irrational. It doesn't make us sane. It gives this insanity, this instability that completely makes us inebriated. It incapacitates us because we don't want to feel bad, so much so that we are willing to make drastic decisions to avoid that. And in my experience, that's led to many things like drug use, drug abuse, substance abuse, self-harm, anger, reactive anger, I guess, the reactions, hate, all this stuff. It's led me down that path. Fearing feeling bad about myself. It never led to victory. Now, I may have felt shame and fear and paranoia and guilt on the road to success. But without any of those successes that I've had, without any of the positive things I told myself, the reinforcement and affirmation of the positive, it was just negative and it stayed harmful. That's all. With that comes despair, a depression, a state of depression that I couldn't get out of because I had no positive thing to lift me out of it. You can't lift yourself up with something that pushes you down inherently. So instead of pushing myself up, I would slam myself to the ground, telling myself that I need to be better and that this fear that was going to drive me towards something would be that answer, when really it was just making me go to a place that I could never, ever, ever get back from without some sort of hope. Now, some might say that shame is a sort of motivator to be better. I couldn't disagree more. While shame may be a catalyst, while shame may be something that can make you go to a place where you're reflective and you look at yourself as someone who is human, who makes mistakes, and who needs to learn from them, shame can also put you in a place where you refuse to do that even more so than you were before. In my experience, I've known shame to be one big thing. And that's something that puts a blockade between me and happiness. Me and fulfillment. That's all it's ever been. It's never been something that I could use to motivate myself because it would be the thing that I've explained. It would drive me towards a standard that is I can't achieve. How could it not? Shame is negative reinforcement. Shame puts this crutch on you. It tells you you're not good enough. And as someone, as you, me, anyone else who might think sometimes that they're not good enough, being told that, being validated in that insecurity will only destroy me. And it will destroy you too. I want you, anyone who's listening, when you want to achieve something, when you want to feel good about yourself, when you want to just be a person, to try to find a way, when you're in these dark moments, when you're in these low points, these depressions, to say, this is the path that I'm on. It's a stepping stone, but it is not the thing that's going to put me on top. The thing that's going to put me on top is saying, let's go get it. You can do this. I trust you. We've done it in small doses, and even if we haven't, we're going to do it now, and we're not going to do it by beating ourselves over the head with bullshit. We're going to do it by beating ourselves over the head with kindness. We're going to do it. Because that is something we have to do in order to feel good about who we are. In order to say we are good enough, we have to feel like we're good enough. You feel me? That's just how it is. We can't feel as if we're worse. We can't feel as if we're lesser. We got to feel like we got something to offer and we got something to prove. And we're going to prove it right now to ourselves. We're going to show ourselves that we're good enough. We're going to walk that walk. That's what we're going to do. Because that is something beautiful in itself that can't be argued with as long as we continue to tell ourselves that. Because if we're trying to prove to ourselves, just ourselves, that we don't need fear to motivate us, in fact, that that's just a crutch, if we can prove to ourselves that we are good enough, and that's our priority right now, no one can argue that except for ourselves. And the only way that we can have any evidence, any sort of counter argument to saying we are good enough is to find a reason to think we're not. And that's where shame and fear and guilt come into play. Now, these are things we all feel. We feel shame and guilt, and a lot of times we need to at times. If I go and kick a kickball at a kid and hit him in the face, and I go laugh at him, and I call him a bitch, I'm probably going to feel guilty or shameful unless I'm just not very nice to people. I probably should feel shameful. I probably shouldn't have kicked that kid in the face with a ball, but regardless, that's not the point. The point is, these things like shame and guilt, they're natural feelings that we have, and we shouldn't try to suppress them if they're natural. But a lot of times in our brains, in our noodles, in our noggins, we don't feel shame healthily. We'll feel shame just fucking in the shower thinking about high school moments where we might have done something a little bit less than desirable to our friend or even just to ourselves. We'll randomly be sleeping at night. We'll be trying to fall asleep, having insomnia episodes and think, oh shit, remember when I was a kid when I threw up in school on that girl that I really liked? Fuck, that sucks, dude. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that anymore. I got to shame myself into making sure that doesn't happen. This shit can come up at any time. Shame, guilt, fear especially, anxiety, and it can drive us to a certain place. And that place is very dark, damp, gross, and very expansive. It keeps growing. And if you let that grow, and not to say that you're going to let that grow, but if that keeps growing, it might get too big for you to get out of. You might get lost in there. You might. It might be a place that you can't escape. And that's a terrifying reality that's far scarier than anything that we could resort back to or regress back to or even move forward to. It's something that we can't escape beyond anything we could have imagined because it's internal. We imagine the outside world to be that scary thing. And yeah, we understand how scary our thoughts are. Trust me, our feelings, our thoughts, we know that. We all know that. But that outside world, the world in which we have to do the things and walk that walk, that's something that we project a lot of fear towards, especially if we haven't done it yet. If we haven't done that thing yet, how are we going to know? How are we going to know? And if we don't know, how can we be confident that we'll do it right? If we're not confident that we can do it right, how am I going to push myself to do it? Fear? Is that the answer? Use the fear that's there. Use the one thing that you do know, the one thing that is there. Are we going to use that? No. No. Because that fear, that is the thing that poses the challenge. It's the thing that is the threat. It's the thing that comes into your room and scares you like the boogeyman at night and says, don't do that thing. I swear to God, I'm going to hurt you if you do that thing. That's the threat. That's the antagonist, the adversary. It's the fear that we have. Now, this natural feeling, this fucking normal thing, this biological, emotional thing, it's normal. It is. Now, suppression of fear, that's not normal. It's not. So if we try to suppress that fear, it's going to end up just leading to that same destination that we're trying to avoid. We often suppress fear basically just as another avoidance of it. We're acting off of fear in a way that's meant to make it not so painful. And in that, we're doing a similar thing, if not the same thing as going out to do something to just not feel fear, if that makes sense. I mean, it's the same. I just spelled it. I just said it. I proved it. Case closed. That's it. We can try to suppress fear all we want, but that builds up. It's like it just starts building up more and more, like a kettle, and then explodes, and leaving your whole kitchen exploded. And we don't want that because we like our kitchen. We need that for food and stuff. We can't have that happen. That explosion fucking sucks. As someone who's been through it. And I honestly, I know how painful it is to just feel fear. To feel that continuously, every day. Anxieties, going out to a social situation to feel as if you're the only one in that place because that fear isolates you no matter where you are. To feel alone in a room full of people. I know what it's like to think about some sort of situation that you have to go do, some responsibility you need to uphold, like getting a job or going to, I guess, even just do some small task, like going to get a book at the library like I had to do. That's scary in itself. Those small tasks, those overwhelming moments where you feel this terrible fear. And it's honestly so easy to just try to suppress that, to try to avoid it. Because fuck, man. Feeling this pain sucks. It sucks fucking dick, dude. I hate it. Truly. Because honestly, with all of it, it doesn't seem to get better so often. Because every time I accomplish a new task, every time I look fear straight in the face and run at it, and it runs off scared of me, I become scared of the next fear that's right behind me. It's right behind me. And I don't know what to do about that because it keeps happening. Life's never going to not be scary. Anxiety is always going to be there. And it's something that's so interesting to me because it's true. It's 100% true. That anxiety will always be there. That fear will always be there. But as we keep confronting it, over time, whether it's long or short, we become braver. We become more and more brave to that fear. The fear still hurts. The fear still can debilitate often. But there are those moments where each time that we practice, we get a little bit more confident in our ability to get through that fear. The fear's still there. It's like still like moving around, looking at you, like hissing at you and scaring you. But you're a little bit more, I guess to say, upward standing. You're standing a little taller against it. And it's kind of wavering a little bit when it looks at you. Like it doesn't know, like it's not familiar with this person. This person who's looking you straight in the eyes and standing tall. Even though it's still scared, you're still scared. You're still terrified. You push through that. And I've experienced that myself. By the way, I'm 21 years old, to remind you. I just turned it recently. And so I'm just still in the thick of all of these issues that I've been through. You know, the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, the substance abuse that I've been treating for a while, for almost 10 months now, the bipolar that I have, the weight gain that I'm fighting against through weight loss, you know, all that stuff. I'm going through it with you. And what I've noticed in myself is that I'm not getting rid of fear. And that the moments that I keep trying to look it in the eyes and not try to do something to run away from it or try to operate some sort of big machine of confidence, which is really just a disguised attempt at running away from it again, I'm actually becoming more brave. The fear's not going away, but I'm getting stronger. I'm strengthening myself because who else would I strengthen? I can't change that world out there. So what I can do is internalize all this and use that sort of internal process to make another process unfold that I can branch out into the world and take fear head on. And now if I want to go and operate my life fearing, I guess, the feeling I would have if I didn't do this, the other end of things, then I would probably fall into a pit again. I'd fall into a pit. If I continue to keep working off of this anti-fear module that I'm living by at any point, like hypothetically, and even sometimes in my real life, if I work, off that shit, I'm just going to end up finding myself at the other end of the spectrum. I'll go from avoiding fear through not doing anything to the other end of the spectrum that says I'm avoiding fear by doing things, by telling myself, oh, I'm better than this, or I'm not as bad as that thing I used to be, that I'm not going to feel that scary way that I did because I'm going to make sure that I run away from that as far as possible. That's not what I'm about to do. I'll try my hardest at least. Sometimes I do that, and it usually ends up bad. But what I can do is find myself at whatever part of the spectrum I fall in, internalize that, reflect, analyze, and walk my walk in the way that tells myself that that's a pretty cool way to walk. That foot movement's pretty nice. It's pretty. It's smooth like butter. It's nice. And you're going to walk somewhere far, and you're going to walk somewhere that's worth walking towards. That destination's going to be real nice. The golden gates, the golden buildings, and the diamond encrusted street signs. Fuck it. I don't know. It's going to be nice. It's going to be. Because I told myself that I deserved that. And so I worked through it. I worked my way towards that path that I believed I deserved to be down. If I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there, I probably would have left, would have walked back home. That's all for today. See ya!